Hello, humans. Welcome to a different kind of video where I speak with somebody else. I'm sure it was weird. You were like, I'm constantly sharing my ideas on what it is to be human. And I'm talking about how we are made to be social, but I'm not getting other aspects, or not other aspects, other viewpoints from other people. So today, in this video, I'm gonna talk with somebody else. I'm talking with Jose. Jose is a um, let's call it a practiced poet. He writes, and this is how he creates. Okay, and today I'm gonna speak to him about how it how following your interests ties in with being a human. So, what? It's just off the bat. What are your thoughts on that, Jose?
Mm. I would have to say when you spoke to me and spoke about actually doing this conversation, the first feeling I felt was a bit intimidated because the question of what it means to be a human is a immensely broad and incalculably deep and vast question. But I was grateful when you shared that it actually has to do with the aspect of following your interests. Then I realized that I had a bit of an aha moment because I realized that is actually part of what it means to be human. To me, is what about my interests? I'm here not to merely survive. That's a
Hmm.
very biological almost programmed. We designed to be able to survive. Okay, I buy into a theistic worldview where I believe humans originate from the design of God and that he is involved in that existence and that he designed that existence to survive. Okay, so we're blessed with biological neurochemical factors that enable survival, but I really deeply believe, even more so, that our existence as humans is not predicated entirely on just surviving. I
Hmm.
believe that we come into the world and come to find certain areas of 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 collaboration with other humans, certain areas of service, certain areas of what is actually described best through this word, I think, interests, things that we become interested in by being taught them, things that it appears, for lack of better knowledge, we have an innate ability for, a natural ability for. But yes, there are interests that we have, and following them is that thing that you hear many people speak of that I can relate to when I'm writing poetry, which is an interest of mine, but more than an interest, if I'm honest. It makes you feel alive at a broad level, and that is my initial thought on interest. It's the what else we are here for, other than just getting by.
Okay. 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 Um, I like what you said there, that we are not created merely to survive. Um, and I want to almost say that creating is not the what else. It is the, so of course you said the what else to surviving. There's no, it's creating is the, I don't want to say the reason for our existence, because I believe the reason for our existence is to love and be loved. Creating is a a st- very big. and deep part of. It's a deep and big characteristic of who or what we are as human
You're
beings.
speaking about our ability to create things as human beings.
Yes, yes. It's more than an ability. It is, why do we feel the drive to write poetry?
All
Why do we?
right, for it. Okay.
Yes, yes. We. It's easy and tempting to think that we create things for their utility and function. Why did we
Sure.
create houses? Because we needed some place to live. Okay,
Mhm.
then why didn't they remain just these boxes?
I
Why do we
get you.
have beautiful houses?
Yeah. Okay. I see where
Yeah.
you're going. Mm.
Why do you? What draws you to writing poetry?
Mm. Uh, and on my way to answering precisely what drew me initially and keeps drawing me to writing poetry, I wanted to just add this layer to that angle you brought out there, and agree with the fact that it's not just the what else, this ability or capacity or propensity we have to make, which is another word for create. I cautiously believe few others, if any, outside of God have the power to truly create, that is to make from nothing. But nonetheless, this layer that I wanted to add on my way to answering the question about what draws me to poetry is just this fact that because of my belief about the origins of human beings, there's this statement that God, the creator, makes and it's recorded in Genesis 1:26, when he says that let us make humans in our image, in our likeness. What I'm reading from that statement is that me, if I'm speaking as a God in that statement, being the creator now, and since I'm going to make people in my image, it makes total sense to me why humans have the ability to make things that
Hmm.
look good. Because once God was done making humans, he said, this is actually very good. There was an
Yes.
extra layer of quality above all the other things and living creatures that he had created. And that's my belief that that's where we get that ability or capacity from. How it ties into what drew me to the making or creating of poetry. I might be wrong about this because I'm a finite creature. I hope to find out one day, but I started into poetry not being drawn to it per se. It came about as of being in primary school, having set work that was really more nursery rhyme than really free verse, or what I define as true poetry.
Okay. 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 Okay.
I'm a bit of weird like that. But so I used to read these nice poety sounding poems, and I was interested in the way that certain words sound exactly like each other, and there is this repeatable rhythm. But I had never attempted to write. I was then 12, turning 13 in the year I did grade 8, 1997, and quite by what occurred to me as an accident, a senior boy in the boys' dormitory of the high school I attended approached me one day and instructed me that I would write his poem for English class. They had been assigned the writing of the English poem. Having never written a poem myself,
Hmm.
I played around with limericks and little knickknacks of these nursery rhyme sounding things, little basic stuff in primary school, but that was for class. So I'd never written a poem or something that I would call a poem. And I was in grade 8 during the time one did not say no to senior boys.
Hmm.
It was a part of your initiation into high school that you do what they say or else you feel what they do, if you know what I mean. So I went to my desk quite scared and pulled out the pen and paper. I heard words in my mind. Now that's similar to what schizophrenic people hear, but I've been tested. There's no sign of mental insanity. But as soon as I wrote the words I heard, I then heard more. And they sounded in a rhythm. They sounded similar. They sounded poetic. and I kept writing until within about 15 minutes, a poem, what I called a poem, was there. I showed it to this boy, and he actually would not believe me that it came from my pen. He was convinced I'd stolen it from Shakespeare, or
Mm.
somebody that was an actual poet. I was the most surprised by the quality of what was produced by my pen, because I'd never written poetry before. Then seeing what impact it had on people, the connections it created, the capacity it opened up to be more loving, more social, especially for an introvert like me, that drew me to poetry. It's what happened after poetry came, that kept me. And I've not, been the best social type of person, but I've always been humbled by this interest of mine, because it puts me in a place where to be able to continue producing, it's now 28 years later, to be able to continue producing really true, strong, and potent poetry. I've had to be humbled countless times. I've had to come face to face with my own thoughts and block out all noise, all internal voices and external voices, and most often actually be alone with God. So it has only been good for me to be in the kind of position and mental state that it takes to write the poetry in the way that I like to write it. And the connections that come with people, I've had to build the capacity to interact more, to
Mm.
be more human, for lack of a better phrase.
I so you may have seen that I reached for a pen and paper. Um,
Mm,
when you said that creating the poem
mm,
um, created opportunities or created connection with other
mm.
human beings,
Was.
I hadn't thought about that before. That
Mm.
we create as a way to connect with other human beings. Um,
Yes,
it's that's the reason for the creating. Um,
that's
it's interesting that you mentioned that.
yes. It's my belief that that's the exact part of, because I don't presume to know the whole purpose of our designer, but I really, the longer I live, the more I believe that part of our design by God is so that when we make things as He is able to, because we're made in His image, it's to create connection. Because when He made us, He he didn't make us because he needs us to exist in order for his existence to continue being eternal, infinite, and immortal. But everything in the lapse of secular history and religious teaching shows me that we are made for connection with something higher than ourselves. I'm grateful to have discovered that higher power to be the intelligent, all knowing God, who's a person as much as he is spirit. But very much to your point that you just made, I see it evident in precisely what has taken place just in my little life, how much more testified to and attested to by the making of other people, where other people have created systems, businesses, made all different facets of things that we're designed to be able to make. It's
Mm.
not a mistake to me. It's no coincidence that connections get created. I believe that to be part of the design. It's purposeful.
Yes, and if you look at anything that's that was created by a human, that
Mm.
of I want to say of substance, that changed the world.
Mhm.
It was done together.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Look,
Absolutely.
poetry is one of those things that you create where you are alone. You mentioned that you learned to be still
Yeah, yeah.
to create your poetry,
Right.
um, and you're doing it alone. But you wouldn't have, let's call it, um, fodder for your themes, for your words,
Yeah,
if you hadn't been connected with other human beings, if you hadn't spent
absolutely.
time around them, because your there's observational poems that you've wrote that speaks about yourself, but when you are pointing to something that you have done,
Mm,
it's almost not possible to not reference somebody else, whether it be an individual or just the collective human race.
yeah, yeah.
So you are doing it alone, but you are
Mm,
still connected to the human race, and that is why I say our aim, our
absolutely.
purpose that we were created for is to love and be loved. When we
Mm,
when
mm,
we when we get it wrong, that our purpose is something other than that,
mm.
that's when we start behaving in an unhuman-like way.
Yeah, yeah, very much. I really have to concur, especially with that reflection you made on the aspect of connection weaving its way into poetry, though it appears, for all intents and purposes, to be a solo act. Because I'll try to describe it briefly in this way. So there's no physical other person with me in the room when the pen is going onto the page. Correct. But that's literally only on the physical level because to be able to produce the poetry, and now this comes from a practicing poet, I have to stand on the backs of other poets, living or dead, uh, through their books uh, and their writings, because one of the aspects of poetry is that every generation or point in time grows and builds on what has been done already. Like with many other disciplines, I have to admit, when we study anything at any place in society, we don't study from absolutely nothing. I believe only God could do
Mm,
that. So we study something based on what's already been discovered. And that's not to say that we plagiarize, but what we do is we allow ourselves to be influenced by what it looks like to do poetry as poets. Uh, and
mm,
and we then get alone. But even when I get alone and I'm making a new poem, what I'm making it with is what you described, that imagination to a certain extent of how this is meant to sound like. And I can only do that if I think at some point how somebody takes it. As much as I'm not there to pander to the private interests of each person on the face of the earth and try to not offend and try to people please, I'm also at some point writing not merely for myself. To create poetry is to create something that becomes literature. And literature is
mm,
something that's read by other people. So I'm going to write in connection to, will someone even understand that they're reading something? I can't write purely and singularly to my own interests. And then, even when I then share the poem through a book or when I recite it, that's the real meat of the connection moment, because then I'm face to face with people at a book launch or at a poetry recital, and I'm there seeing the impact that those words have on people at the moment the impact is had. Sometimes it matches the mood I felt when I wrote. Sometimes it the way someone experiences the poem even shifts what it can mean in my mind, or it gives me another angle to it. And that's the beauty for me, the
mm,
beautiful mystery of human connection, is that it's not be controlled by any one human, but at least framed within God's parameters. What you mentioned, that it's selflessness, it's the giving of self to the other. When we act outside of that model of love, that's when we see problems come into the human race. And my poetry so far that I've seen have created only good opportunities to be of service and and receive love and connection from other people, which have fed my soul, I must admit.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that it's bringing connection. That
Mm,
it creates the connection, and when you create and you share it with
mm,
somebody else, it it brings new light to you. It's a
mm.
way of it's it's a prettier way of having a conversation like this,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
even though you're the only one speaking, when I react in a certain way, I move my face like this, I have a certain facial expression, I make a sound, even it changes. It's a way of speaking back to you, the poet, and it
Yeah.
gives you new insights, like you were saying. Um, so, yes, following your interests helps you to create connection with other human beings. And I'm so grateful that we could hear it from a poet first, somebody who paints pretty pictures with their words. So thank you, Jose, for sharing your stuff. Have you published a book yet? A book of poetry yet?
Not my own volume. For all the
Okay,
connection it has created, I've reacted to it with lots of fear over all the years, and that I
okay,
work on privately. So I'm going to not be too much of a prophet and try to predict when this year I'm publishing, but I am currently working on finally my own first volume of poetry. I've been published in various literary journals as part of my studies in creative writing and also after that. But for the first time, I'm actually seriously working on my own volume of poetry and hopefully also an audio recording, a small EP of poems that I plan to release later this year. I'll stay in contact with you directly, and then and also those who might look out for it when I start advertising or marketing it. But I'm
yeah,
still working on the content at the moment, so uh,
fantastic.
I don't want to say watch this space. That sounds so content creatorish, but
Yeah,
no offense to any content creators, but it's
I will say it for you. Watch the space.
yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
and when you do, we can have a chat again, and you can share the process of actually creating something for the masses.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll do that. But thank you for being part of it. It was great to have a conversation with you.
It was a great pleasure to be here. Thanks. Keep doing what you do.